Ready to go right here on Fade to Black. Tonight, Laura Eisenhower is with us. Tomorrow night, Michael Schratt. Wednesday night, Barry Littleton. Thursday night, it's another Fader night with open lines all night long. Tonight, it's Laura Eisenhower. She's a global alchemist, a cosmic mythologist, and an intuitive astrologist. She's an internationally acclaimed speaker, has presented her work worldwide. Laura is the great-granddaughter of President Dwight David Eisenhower. She's one of the leading researchers on health and exopolitics, alchemy, metaphysics, and ancient history. She works to free us from the 3D holographic time loop, false archonic systems, and the military-industrial complex with their hidden agendas so we can take our power back. Tonight, we're going to discuss everything. We're going to get centered with Laura. I need Laura, and she's right here. Laura, good evening. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Jimmy?
Well, you know I need you. Right? I need you. We need you, Laura. Welcome back to the program. And crazy times right now, crazy things going on this planet. And you're no different than the rest of us. You're affected in the same ways, aren't you?
Oh, completely. Yes. Absolutely.
Well, and the reason, look, I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about, but more than that is you share what's going on with you. You're not perfect. You post what's going on with your life. You've got positive things going on, but when negative things affect you, you're not scared. You let it hang out, and then you tell everybody what you do to fix yourself. Is that that personal stuff, putting it out there like that? Is that the way to go, and does it help you make those changes?
Well, for me, it works. I don't know if it works for others. Sometimes people feel vulnerable. I don't feel like I have anything to lose. And I share a lot of information about the healing process. And I mean, I just, there's so much that I feel we need to do as a society, as a humanity, to air out some of these unconscious wounds and programs and things that we've gone through in our life, and not to be afraid of it, because I think, part of the program is to shove it down and to put on a facade. And I don't really think that helps anybody in the end. And this is the only way I know how to be. So it would be incredibly uncomfortable if I was any different. So, I mean, I think it comes down to, we just need to be true to ourselves. And this is what being true to myself looks like, is just kind of like, and when I do presentations and I put this information together, I realize how helpful it is for me, that it's become a way of life. It's my lifestyle. I live and breathe it. It's not just research, right? So,
well,
yeah.
I've seen you post day to day for years now, and I've seen this one cyclical thing. I've seen you work through issues, right? Which seems to be in real time, where you will start off the day with a post about, okay, this is what's going on. I'm so frustrated. 20 minutes later, you'll come back with a post that says, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done the first post because here I am now with the second post. And then the third post will come in, oh, I am so much better, and this is what I did. And that's very, very personal stuff. Most people would keep that completely to themselves, but you have chosen to put it out there and show everybody the process. When did you start to get the courage for this, Laura? Because it's got to be tough to do.
It isn't, though. That's the problem. That's why I go back and I'm like, maybe I should delete this, because
right.
This is too easy to just, I'm like, wait, thousands of people are probably seeing this, or I don't know how many see me in the news feed. So I have to sort of remind myself, well, maybe I shouldn't go there. It is cyclical. I don't do it all the time, but sometimes I'm sort of splitting at the seams, and I know I'm not alone, and I know a lot of people go through stuff too. And I like to honor these initiations and these deep processes, because I know how easy it is to feel stuck and like there is no way to get to the other side. And I think if we give a voice to it more, there's less shame and there's more humor, and it isn't as bad as maybe it feels in the moment. And so sharing it kind of like lightens me up a little, because, it's like, sure, maybe there's criticism, but that's okay. Maybe there's relatability. Maybe, there's just, something to poke fun at, because that's usually what it ends up being for me, is just something that kind of makes me laugh. I mean, some things are heavy too, but yeah, I started Facebook, I don't know, gosh, 2009 or 2010 maybe.
Right.
And I didn't expect that I was going to sort of build this social media as much as I have. After I became a public speaker, it really began to grow. And I haven't changed from the way I was when I, initially started posting. I haven't really changed much ever. I mean, I've always been kind of a transparent person with a pretty whack sense of humor. And I've always had my head into these deeper kind of conversations and sort of information. So, and I realized at the end of the day, whoever comes and goes, that this is the best thing I can give for me, or else I just start to not feel well and really kind of, out of balance. But so it's really the quest to maintain, some sort of, balance. And yeah, I just see us kind of all in this together. And why hide? I don't want to be a public person if it means I have to hide. I'd rather, yeah, I don't want to do anything if it involves having to change the core nature of me. And I know the information is valuable. I'm flexible as far as my beliefs go, but I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for some of the stuff that I've pulled together. So I feel like that is a really strong foundation in me. And so, part of that courage, I think, is, kind of if I'm like rowing a boat and a big storm comes, you can't really hide it. But what are you going to do in the face of it? You're going to learn skills. You're going to, be preventative. You're going to know what to do better next time. And because I'm trained in wilderness expedition leadership, it becomes my ultimate metaphor, how I sort of steer my own ship in life. I'm not afraid of the storms or poisonous creatures. I want it to help me to be stronger. I want to be an inspiration. I want to show, hey, if this is showing up, yeah, it's not fun. It's not easy, but perseverance and knowing that the negative and the difficult is very temporary. And the rewards that come from coming out the other end are great, because not only is one a little wiser, maybe one's capacity to just share and unify is that much greater as well. And I love that part of it. I love the sense of community that I never really had. So it's kind of it's all so surreal that I sometimes don't even feel like I'm really here. So it's like, what do I have to lose when I post weird stuff on Facebook?
Throughout the day, all day long, we are presented with a fork in the road, the right and the wrong, the positive and the negative, where you have to make a decision, and the right road is the difficult path. Doing the right thing is hard. Going and doing the wrong thing and being negative is simple. It's easy, right? That's the easy road to take. Why is it that so many choose the wrong path?
Well, I think it's easier for people to go into a victim consciousness or to blame others or to just feel bitter. Maybe they're just really not seeing an expansiveness about what's possible for us in the future. I think it's also a neglect of really recognizing what we're made of. Yeah, and it definitely depends on the type. Like, I've definitely felt into both. Sometimes it's just so easy to just love and have an open heart and then be walked all over. And then I think a person jumps into the other side out of a need for protection. And if a person's experienced one for too long, they might actually form a persona that ends up taking over, and they lose their sense of freedom or love or openness. And so I think in the end, if we can integrate both the light and dark, we can still be open-hearted and loving, but with boundaries, with discernment, and with honesty. It's like, it's not always going to be easy. We don't have to pretend it's always easy, but we can hold ourselves a little bit more accountable. We can also know where to draw the line and know what belongs and what doesn't. I also think that the programming's really encouraged us, just to go, back to your point, which is really important, in general in our society, is I think there's a lot of permission to go in that direction. The programmings are not looking for our best interest. It's not standing for human development and spiritual development and ascension, which to me is, really lighting up and activating our dormant strands of DNA, understanding what our junk DNA is, and being the shift, and understanding that these initiations are taking us more into the truth of who we are. Well, we're in a sabotaging society that takes advantage of those initiations, and so people give their power away. They end up at a doctor. They end up getting maybe a fear diagnosis. They're given a drug. Maybe they lose a relationship or a job, and it keeps us in this duality. The programs do,
right,
where if it didn't work out, you're bitter and you hate life and nothing's going well, nothing's going right. But if we can defy those programmings, these are amazing rites of passages that take us into more of who we really are, because those things don't matter anyway. We have to learn to navigate beyond the matrix, because it's only going to trick us in the end. And I think that's what creates such a negative perspective for people that stay stuck in it, or they're the ones that are rewarded for being a part of that program to exploit people that might feel vulnerable.
I was the other day, this is astounding to me. I'm driving, I'm listening to talk radio here in LA. I never go off of talk radio. And the host literally said this: it's okay to drive solo in the carpool lane. Right? And said that if you get caught one day and you have to pay the traffic ticket, that's fine. But just think about all of the other days that you got away with it. Uh-huh. Now, that's the programming you're talking about. That is a negative decision. You know what I mean? That simple thing sets a mindset right there for the rest of society that it is okay to do this. You're going to get caught once. But if you run your entire day with doing the wrong thing and hoping that you're not going to get caught, or you're going to get away with it, or you're going to do something behind somebody's back, or and you operate your life in a negative aspect, that's the programming that you're talking about right there. And it's like instilled. This went out to millions of people. And it really, really bothered me. Hence me having to call you. Right?
I love your last post recently about, be a positive person. You have that choice, right? And I think integrity is everything. I think that's what keeps us connected to spirit. It keeps us grounded to earth. It helps us to have, healthy relationships. If we're just living to see what we can get away with, then we're probably just trying to deceive others too, and see how much we can manipulate them or play them to get what we want from them too.
Right.
And that makes you a very toxic person. That makes you just as bad as the cabal, because you've bought into their game and you're enabling it, and you're a part of the energetic pollution that we're trying to clear. And it's not appropriate. It's not. I don't know what people think they're hiding from. And it's not about believing in God or a punishing God or heaven or hell, but it's like cosmic and natural law. I mean, just that alone. There are greater laws that, and I saw that a lot, especially spending a lot of time in the wilderness. You see the instant karmic effects of people being a schmuck to each other, or stealing the food, or doing it's like instant backlash. But in our society, because we're in this false matrix, it buffers these lessons somewhat, because you can sort of work your way around it. I mean, there's the opportunity to just drown yourself in some sort of way of life that other people are in agreement to, that won't hold you accountable, because they want to do it too. And so everybody is in that sort of codependent, negative ego mindset, and it's really hard to convince people to snap out of it. It's too bad, because it's taking them down a road that I think they would, regret. That's called digression. That's called potentially being more siphoned into an artificial, timeline, and, negative technologies that, are siphoning life force that hands its power away for the instant gratification of thinking it has power, because trickery is a form of, false power.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. There is, and that trickery, that blinding, it reminds me of the line in a Black Sabbath song, right? Heaven and Hell, I swear, which is, the line is, the world is full of kings and queens who blind your eyes and steal your dreams. And think about how accurate that is, right? It's exactly what you are saying right now. And this programming that it goes on all day long. Today, so many are completely blinded by it, and they don't realize that they're being taken off of the path.
That's the power structures in our world. It's the fact that all this satanic ritual abuse and all this dark stuff, mind control programs, exist in the places that people look up to, and they emulate and they idolize the individuals that are caught up in it. Whether that's those that are still attached to the royal family or just the celebrity realms. I'm not saying they're all like that, but anything that raises its power above the people is something to really question, because not only are we allowing ourselves to sort of live through it, the thing that operates it isn't, coming from a very high place. It's sort of looking to, create that. I'm not saying that they're all like out of integrity or living like that, but the mindset of programming a negative ego is to feel powerful because of what you can get away with. So if we see certain people in powerful positions that are getting away with like child trafficking or money laundering or using, trained assassins or mules to run their drugs, the cabal sits there and laughs and treats us like we're the lowly, stupid ones, and their game is up because many have become wise. And the best way to keep pushing it in the right direction is to keep oneself in check in the very things that you're bringing up. How much are you still operating from that place of what can I get away with? Who cares who it hurts? Because it's service to self. I mean, it's a service to self mentality. And that's the very cabal. And that's the core of the cabal mindset that has its tentacles everywhere and that uses individuals in the most monstrous, way with trauma-based mind control to keep, this certain power alive, to then program the people that are watching it that this is something to strive for. And again, I'm not saying everybody that's involved in these industries are like that, but the more I learn, the more horrifying it is. And the more I see that this is not just, internet stuff, meeting people and doing readings with people and getting real close to the people that have been like right in it. I mean, it's just the nature of it. And there's a lot of victims that are being used. There's a lot of blackmail in order to create that, sort of thing. But we're the byproduct as far as what we pull from it when we watch the TV, when we, listen to the news, when we look at the programmings and, sort of mainstream media and magazines and all that kind of stuff.
What I have found is that if you throughout your day simply and do this as a test for yourself, be honest with yourself throughout the day. If you just do the right thing, right? You got the choice, the wrong thing or the right thing. Finish your day with a series of doing the right things. Right. And at the end of the day, you just feel better about yourself. But this is what the byproduct is? Now you don't have to cover up the lies, right? The spider web that you have, concocted. You don't have to go back and fix things and cover up the next day and wonder about, because you did a string of positive things all day long. And that's all you have to do. It's more difficult, but in the end of the day, you're rewarded, aren't you?
That's how I feel. I mean, that's why I'm really honest about what I'm going through. And I don't want to, say too much, or I don't want to certainly bring anybody down if I'm having a hard time. I like to kind of go into that place, though, and come out the other end, like you're saying. And that's my process. And I encourage that, with clients I work with. And, these are the underlying messages that I have in a lot of my presentations. It really comes down to us. It's like, right. Yes, a lot about this other information is really important, but it needs to point back to us. And the reason I think I feel clear is because I'm willing to say sorry. I'm willing to fall down and get back up again. I'm willing to see the errors of my triggers and how they make me see a reality that might not be there because of past traumas. I need that self-honesty. I mean, who am I fooling otherwise? And so I can't remember when I wasn't like this. And yeah, it works for some and not others, but I just really hope people feel more encouraged, because there's greater bonds that are formed. There's greater trust that is created. And we really need unity more than anything. And we don't need to fool each other, because eventually it catches up.
Now, so what is the advice? I think that all of us know right from wrong. We've been told this, since birth, right? We all know the difference between right and wrong. But what's the advice for making the right decision?
It's the same thing that, everything's energy, so things that aren't healthy, that are toxic, they might give us instant gratification and, certain joys. And I'm not saying, oh my gosh, we should give up everything. Geez, we've been stuck in this lower density. I think we should have some fun and not worry so much about everything. But I think the number one thing, if we could get right, would allow us to transmute a lot of the other toxicity we deal with in the world. If we don't have our inner self clear and grounded to being in our divine center, integrating polarity, living in integrity, honoring relationships, treating, others with love and respect despite our differences, then everything else is really hard for our system to handle because we're not operating from a higher dimensional level. We're not connected to spirit, which transmutes, which heals, which alchemizes, which purifies. And we're just kind of like getting ourselves in deeper trouble, which creates even more of a need for these externals to appease that lack or that void. So I think the greatest advice is not only is it going to help you to reclaim your life force and call your energy back from past situations that were negative, it's like a form of soul retrieval just to step up and say, I'm going to break these patterns so that the same patterns that one, might have been used to creating aren't really as easily showing up. That's the whole deal with patterns. Life teaches us everything that we, need. We're here for soul development and spiritual development. We've been taught that it's about status and power and all these other things that even an awake person might still fall in the trap because it's ingrained in us. It's multi-generational. We've been in a 26,000 year cycle of a lot of BS and a lot of dark technologies that have been operating, a lot of world wars, a lot of disconnection of masculine and feminine, spirituality and science, and this bombardment of all this, other stuff. We need to cut ourselves slack and not be afraid to fail because there is no real true failure. We need to not be afraid of what others think. We need to be okay with the shadow elements. And the greatest advice that I can give is because this is what advances us. It's not just some like, oh, isn't that nice? It's a fluffy, nice little philosophy we can go to sleep with. Mm-hmm. I literally am positive that this is what helps to advance us. It helps us to defy these lower realms. It helps us to activate dormant strands of DNA because ultimately our DNA holds the elements. And I'm not going to get into, anything without you, asking first, but the nucleic acids in our DNA hold the elements, including ether. The mitochondrial DNA connected with the mother holds the element ether, and it's been damaged for thousands of years. Now that's healing, and it's a nurturing energy, and it's like everything that we would need as proof to know that we're in this ascension window basically exists. When we choose these darker realms, we're actually putting ourselves on the line, and we're actually threatening the well-being of our soul in the long run. That is going to take a lot of time and a lot of, work and energy to undo if we don't figure it out while we're at this crossroads, while we're in this very, very pivotal, crucial window period. And it's just not worth it in the end, because at the end of the day, when all the material stuff falls away, you only have your soul. And if that's played a lot of games with people, if it's hurt people, if it's used and manipulated, if it's lied, if it was only out for self-gain, you can't run from that. And if you want to end up, with these dark technologies and end up joining, the cult of the Cabal and the Satanists, I feel for a person, but I don't know where they think it's getting them because it's certainly not honoring what's sacred. And I think the rewards are vast. And I think that's what we're all up against right now and why it's so difficult for people because, maybe it's not easy, but go into the divine innocence, and just be kind of like, allow the play to come back. Everything gets so heavy and serious that, I think just people want to lash out and want to rebel and want to just go into these lower, realms. Because who really cares about one another? It's everyone for themselves. But, that's sort of a anti-human agenda. And our unity is what I consider to be the immune system of the planet that gets rid of the parasites. And each one of us, if we take that stand, we're going to feel safer with each other. We're going to feel more comfortable with ourselves, and we can laugh at it all if it gets too heavy. And this is how we move mountains. So
yeah, what's interesting is, and I'm not talking in a simplistic form, but this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and it goes back to the old Aesop fable, right? The tortoise and the hare. And if you're looking for shortcuts in life, you may taste them from time to time, but the real satisfaction comes from real work. And in the end, you get all of those rewards that you were trying to get or you thought were important to you in those shortcuts. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it, Laura?
Totally. Yeah. And it's also knowing that sometimes there's a lot of, fear. More the fear of the anticipation of what's going to happen when I take a leap versus, how it actually feels once you do. Kind of like, should I jump out of the airplane? Is my parachute going to open? It feels like a huge risk to just surrender to the self and say, I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to be the best that I can be. Because I think deep down, we really are good people. I think we all want, love. We love the earth. We appreciate, all these things. And we've been taught to think, otherwise. And people really fear rejection. They fear being the oddball out.
Right.
They fear the ramifications of going against the program. They even are concerned about being targeted or, what happens if I do this? And the thing is, we're only going back into our natural habitat. It's so much more comfortable and natural than that we can imagine, that we've been taught to disassociate so much from ourselves that we have all these other things that create these false identities or sub-personalities. And when we surrender to like releasing them from ourselves, and people start to leave our lives, people tend to freak out. Like they fear the isolation. They fear, those periods of loneliness as they transition into something much better. But the thing is, it's not a requirement to be perfect. It's not about that. Like you have to be a perfect saint or angel. It's just be the best you that you can be. And then you won't feel so alone when you're going through, the struggle to just get there. Because the thing is, you won't be creating a backlash because you're upsetting people,
right.
You're hurting people, or you're allowing somebody to steal and rob energy from you, like people who stay stuck with narcissists or, toxic relationships.
Well, let me jump in right there.
When you stand in your power and you lose people, it's like.
Let me jump in. We got to take a break right here, Laura. If I keep letting you go, I've got no commercials tonight. Our guest tonight, Laura Eisenhower. I feel better already. Laura Eisenhower is with us. It's Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be right back. More Laura right after this short break. Stay with us. You're listening to a preview of Fade to Black. To get the full episode, go to jimmychurchradio.com and get our podcast. Click on the podcast banner or sign up in the membership area for downloadable MP3s. Everything commercial free. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I just posted up. I had to do this. This is Jose. He's amazing. Everybody knows Jose. I just posted a picture up. He just looks so good. I had to take it during the break. And Jose he was gifted to me from Lisa Frith, who got Jose from Carolyn Ford. Carolyn is the best. And people ask me all the time, where'd you get Jose? I got Jose from Carolyn Ford. And the links are right there in Twitter. And if you want your very own crystal skull like Jose, just go to Carolyn Ford. The links are right there. Now, our guest tonight is Laura Eisenhower. And Laura, you're going to be speaking at our very own Soul Tech conference over the July 4th weekend in Loveland, Colorado. And are you excited about that?
Absolutely. Very excited.
The opportunity to teach. You are a teacher, and we have, chosen, the best and the brightest out there who teach. But that's your life's path. It's what you do. I want to ask you a very personal question. We're talking about the right and wrong, the positive and negative. I think all of us get a rude awakening and have that epiphany at some point in our life where you just took the wrong path one too many times and you get caught. I want you to look back. What was that life-changing moment when you just knew that you were tired of taking the negative path? What happened? Do you remember that moment?
Oh, man. Oh, what a question. I think it has happened a number of times. I remember in my teenage years, I don't want to put it down to, because my astro sign is this, but relationships have always been a really big deal to me ever since, my first relationship. I've always just had this idea of sacred union and knowing that this was really important for the planet. And I was writing about it. It was like my whole world. So when those relationships didn't work out, instead of sort of seeing the larger picture, I let myself get like really crushed. And it wasn't so much about the person. It was just sort of the concept and just really seeing how difficult that is to attain and how much, most don't really care about that. It's the program or whatever. I know I say the word program a lot, but what we're taught is to not really care about it. Especially in our younger years, it's just kind of like a nightmare. So I would say that I started to go into some really, dark places. Some of the places it took me, I'm kind of proud of. Like I stopped, going to school. I had the worst attendance. I'm like, yeah, because school's kind of stupid. But I mean, not all of it is, but I respect now, knowing what I know now about some of the BS that, we're that's pushed upon us in the school systems. It's like, well, that wasn't, a totally dark or negative thing. I mean, not to go into maybe the details of the story, there's been plenty of times that I've hit my head against a wall and really just
are you saying literally?
Really, like I stopped caring about the human part, but not the spiritual part.
And why is it so easy to do? When it's the wrong thing. Is it that we just don't care in the moment?
Well, I kind of, right or wrong, I mean, it sort of depends on the person. I know that there's a lot of people, it's, one or the other. And there's a major distinction. I'm not saying I'm immune from it at all. But it's sort of like, it's hard to know what it means sometimes when the wrong can take us into a greater right. If we're willing to go through the underworld, if we're willing to go through the transformation and come out the other end wiser and better than before, then that wrong can actually serve us. But yes, in that moment, why would I put myself in this situation where I have to, go through all this just to get myself back? And then, I just decided, well, instead of being in the sensation of it, which can sometimes end up feeling like guilt and just pain and just misery, I'm like, well, what is it trying to say to me? And it really opened me up to the greater work that I do. I didn't like what I was seeing around me, the way people were treating each other. I felt just so cut off and just so, frustrated that I took it out on myself. So the wrong thing was I became pretty self-destructive. I didn't want to hurt anybody else, but I ended up kind of hurting myself because I was just like, what am I doing here? Mm-hmm. And so I just poured it into, the research that I do, the books that I've been working on, if I ever freaking finish them, even starting at a young age. I was talking about the photon belt and, ascension energies, and people were like, what? It wasn't anything that anybody talked about. And then I was like, definitely projected upon. And I think the wrong thing was to believe in those stigmas. And I didn't really let it get to me. I just decided to kind of go off and disappear. But I would say self-destructive tendencies have been hard. And yes, I've made mistakes. Where I did not want to tell a person how I really felt because I was so afraid of hurting their feelings that I realized, because kind of going back to what we talk about, you just got to say it like it is. And I think the reason we choose the wrong thing sometimes is we're maybe afraid of punishment. We're afraid of the ramifications if we don't speak up, but then we do the wrong thing sometimes that could actually, provoke that or cause that, where you're lucky if you don't get caught. I mean, I wouldn't say I've been the most law-abiding citizen. I've definitely, and yeah, I've landed myself in quite a bit of trouble, but I always felt like, okay, I've learned my lesson, but what is the real reality here? Like, am I trying to answer to the system and do what's right? Or am I trying to be true to myself? Like where does this all really apply? So I've always been sort of lost in the rights or wrongs of being like human. And then I sort of translated it into what is the right or wrong in terms of myself, where I might be just with somebody just because I'm afraid of hurting their feelings, or I'm choosing to be destructive because I'm really upset at something outside of me and I'm taking on the blame and the guilt. Some people go the opposite route and they blame everybody and, it's everybody else's fault. I tend to be the opposite. And I got to find the middle road. Like I'm a Libra. It's like trying to find the balance. So I think it really depends like what the experience is, what our perspective is, where our intention was. And, if we're really out to wrong people and we're hurting others, that's a wrong that I've never really had a problem with. But no, I've made mistakes, of course, but been willing to correct those mistakes and apologize if I didn't have the sense about me at the time. But I think my personal struggle has been, where have I wronged me? And that's been the greatest lesson of my life, is to give myself more respect and self-love and take, better care of myself when I'm feeling just really like overwhelmed by the darkness in the world, feeling it so much and just feeling the weight of it, starting from a really young age, just what do I do with this? How do I handle it? There's no like-minded people. And then, boom, here we are, like social media, I'm on Jimmy Church and like communities everywhere, like-minded people are everywhere. So, I'm kind of catching up with those old patterns of, oh my gosh, you can breathe now. It's like, there's love, there's support, there's real good people. and it's not that we're perfect. It's just, as long as we all have a heart and we're doing our best. I mean, I couldn't have asked for more. So I'm so grateful. And I just remind myself all the time. And I do go back in the past. I have my regrets. And I know that's not maybe the best use of my time, but I would rather struggle with regret than be oblivious and in denial that I've ever screwed up.
That's exactly the point. And you bring up the system, and worrying about conforming inside of the system and how some of us can, live in that fear. Well, ultimately, if you are working on yourself and doing the right things, the system doesn't even matter. Right? It shouldn't even come into play if you are doing the right things inside of yourself. The system is something that shouldn't even pop in your mind, right?
Yeah, I don't feel like it's us against them all the time. I mean, I know there's the sort of mafia, dark cabal, or the 1%, or the thing that is creating a lot of the havoc that we see on this earth, disease and war and all that. But when we look at just general society, I see a lot of goodness in people. And I know that there's some dark in everything, and there's some that are compromised that are working for the dark side. But when I find myself in sticky situations, I don't feel like a victim to it, and I don't feel like I'm better than it. I like to just connect with those that are around me on a sort of soul level, as best as I can if they're willing to go there. I can laugh with a cop. I can hang with pretty much any walk of life. If we could just get down to that level. Now, if it comes down to something in reality playing out, like a parking ticket or something worse, or, some sort of trespassing thing, or, God knows, if in the past, if substances were involved, I mean, it's really just about how you approach the situation. Like, I'm not angry at the system. I don't like the things that are operating it. I don't like the dark agendas. I don't like, the hidden elements that are really hard for people to swallow, that are hiding and kind of pulling the strings a bit and creating a lot of false flags or propaganda that, controls people's minds in the way that they think. But my way of beating the system is to not look at the programmings in the people I meet, not holding them accountable to those programmings and treating them like, oh, you're just a sheeple, you don't know anything and you're asleep. Yes, I've gone into those zones where I get frustrated, but I notice, when I meet a person, that person cares about their family. They're a beautiful person. They're trying to figure it out too. And there's a lot of disinformation as well. And we all can handle what we can handle wherever we are in our life. But if you're in front of, somebody who's doing their job and they care about what they're doing and they're in it for the right reasons, it's very easy to feel love and connection no matter where we're at. And when we can hold that, it weeds out the ones that are really maybe, dark. And if anybody's going to have the ramifications in the end, it's them, not the ones that are holding love and good intentions in their heart that are just trying to figure it out. And that's why I haven't gotten into that much trouble in life, or nothing I haven't been able to get out of, or I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. I take that approach. I feel, I don't feel better. I don't feel lesser than, but I struggle with, states of minds here and there, like anybody, where, you're not feeling at your best. But when it comes down to it, I see the love and spirit shine through whatever we call the system or society. And I think if we can just notice that and empower that, then we'll start to collapse the matrix and start to dismantle these dark technologies that are trying to control the narrative and compromise people even further, when we see some of the potential future scenarios that could play out. I think if we all choose to just see the good in one another and encourage the best out of each other, it's going to resolve everything and overcome all of this. And, I used to kind of wear a hoodie in the grocery store. Like, I don't know if I can go shopping just because I'm sensitive. It's not because I have an aversion to the world. I mean, sometimes I do, but I'm like anybody, we have our days. And when I just feel an openness, it's like the synchronicities are amazing. Just the small exchanges, one can have, and just feeling like, wow, I'm not just, trying to leave my sacred space and figure out how to just do simple human things, which used to kind of freak me out. Now I feel a lot more comfortable.
Let me ask you this. We all of us, yourself included, right? We can identify the negative people that are around us, and we know who they are. And when you have somebody that needs some help, or could probably use some advice, do you approach that negative person to speak to them, or is it easier just to avoid it and let them continue going down the negative path? What do we do?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I like to make myself available as a resource. I want people to feel safe to come to me, but I don't want to be pushy and be like, oh, I don't want to be invasive, like, oh, you must need some help, unless they're really struggling and it's obvious. It's like, oh, hey, do you want to borrow my cell phone? You have a flat tire, or, how can I, just help you in a troubling situation that has more to do with some of the, crazy things that can happen to us in this human realm. But if it's a really negative, depressed person needs, I mean, I'm the kind of person that will help those in need. Like if I see a person that is struggling on the streets, or somebody even who has a GoFundMe out, like I do my best. If I have enough, I will do, all that I can. Because that person's already saying, hey, I need help. I try not to be too invasive, but I want to be like a comfortable person. And I'm open to the person who approaches me. Now, if they approach me with attack and negativity and they're acting out and they aren't able to handle what they're struggling with, and it turns into a behavior pattern that I find completely inappropriate, then I have my boundary, because it's really on them. It's like, if you need help, you got to figure out how to create the right approach. You got to, come from, a place of safety and respect. And if that's the case, absolutely. But I'm not going to put myself in harm's way, even if that person's struggling. Maybe I'll plant a little seed, leave a little business card, like on a bulletin board. I mean, it's not like I'm out and about that much, so I don't know at this point. But, I used to put my services to do readings, in places that people could find. So I guess to make a quick point, even though I'm not very quick, I like to be a resource. And if I see somebody struggling that's afraid to ask, and I can just, tell that they're like in great need, I'll do all that I can. If somebody's willing to say, hey, I need help and I'm able to do it, I absolutely will. But the acting out and the inability to face it and look at it in a way that, is healthy, I would avoid that, just because I have put myself in that situation before and didn't end up coming out the situation in a very good way. Putting myself in harm's way is something I just won't do. And if I have to defend myself, I will kick some, what.
Do you ever, I want to make one quick comment. One thing that I enjoy about you is when you speak publicly and you're done speaking and you walk out of the conference room or hall or whatever, you have people following you. Right. I mean, physically, like this thing, and you attract this positive vibe. Do you notice that? Do you notice when you know what I mean? Do you pick up on that?
It's something I don't notice in the moment. I'm more concerned, like, oh my God, I hope I got to, answer everybody's question and I gave everybody a hug. And because I'm the kind of person that loses sleep over the silliest thing, like, oh, I hope I didn't get misunderstood. I hope I didn't say the wrong thing, or hope that person didn't feel like I brushed them off because I had to go over here, instead of being like, oh my gosh, people are gathering around to, maybe give me some love and appreciation. It's just kind of the way my mind is. I could get like a standing ovation. I'll still be sitting there like, oh, this slide, I could have changed this. I could have done this a little bit better. But I think it's how I kind of raised the bar to become a better person. I just wish like I could do it a little less, because it's a little counterproductive at times. And my poor partner is just like probably really sick of me, like, like, oh, I hope I did this okay, and I hope I didn't offend that person. And he sometimes reminds me, he's like, you got to see all this love that you're getting, and I wouldn't worry about that. I'm like, just like you're reminding me of. So no, I wouldn't say that I register it. It's all very, very surreal. I'm more like, I have a mission and I want something to take place. I want to be able to deliver something that's going to help a person feel closer to who they are. And that's number one. And the rest of it, no, I can't say I notice. Sometimes, I do, but it's usually when I reflect back, I'm like, oh yeah, actually, if you can shut your monkey mind up, that actually went really well.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Do you ever meet somebody you don't know? Right? You don't know this person, but they'll come up and shake your hand, and you catch the energy, from hand to hand, from the handshake. Do you ever pull back and go, whoa, whoa, whoa? Sure. Is there can you pick up on the negative or the positive vibe through touch?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I'm a very sensitive being. Sometimes it's hard to know, is it a projection? is there just a trigger there because of something else, or is it really something that I'm getting from them? So I like to give a person a little bit more time before I just jump to any conclusion.
Right.
And it usually doesn't take long after you spend a little bit. Some people don't get boundaries. That's a tough one for me. I don't know necessarily how to give a person like the blunt indication that I need to be left alone without feeling, and I don't know if they're actually being a good person or a nice person. They're just oblivious, or they're trying to get in my space in a manipulative way, and they're really out to, harm me. And because there's so much going on, it's like really hard to just kind of ground into what is it that I'm really feeling. Now, if I have enough time to, breathe and, have a little bit of downtime before I approach a lot of people, I would say that it's a lot easier to read. But if, there's just so many different energies coming all at once, I have a little bit of a harder time. And again, it usually takes a little bit longer to know a person, to be aware of who they are, maybe see them more than once and just kind of get the general vibe. But yeah, I mean, there's some that you can just tell by the look in their eyes. And even just looking in the audience, you can just see the vibration of them, in the audience. And, it's tough because I don't, there is that duality of positive, negative, but I always think that one blends into the other, and it's sort of like a cyclical thing till eventually the negativity sort of irons itself out or sort of squeezes out the gunk, and it's a little bit easier the next time around. One goes into the dark night of the soul or faces, those painful inner places that can be very obvious that somebody's struggling in. I think if we go through enough of that, it doesn't blindside us, and it doesn't lock us into a vibration that is really off-putting. But I think people's growth is stunted because there's really nothing in our culture, in our school systems, that help us through those initiations. Instead, it ends up being a medical condition when really that could have been the person's greatest awakening. And instead they're being drugged or told that, they've got this diagnosis or this issue. And it's very unfair because I know that when a person goes into those zones, they have the opportunity to, come full circle. And when there's no guidance, when there's no understanding, and a person dwells in that for too long, they can be very, very hard to reach for the rest of their life. And that's what's really troubling about the way the system's set up and what people are taught to do as a service. They might not realize that they're not really helping that person, but they're taught like, oh no, this is great. Give them this drug, tell them they've got this condition. And again, I'm not trying to bust on the medical industry, but I think in this window period, we're going through such huge transformations. We need to change the names of these labels and look at it in a different way so it's more empowering. Is there somebody, we're going to head to a break here in 2 minutes. So I'm giving you the warning, the Laura Eisenhower 2-minute answer, which is hard to get to. But is there somebody, is there a speaker or an author today that inspires you that you listen to? I've always been really aligned with Lisa Renee. We've become, really good friends. When it comes down to it, if we haven't talked for a while, we can be on the phone for hours, and it's just like family. It's safe. Her information is just, it just fits so much into everything that I've always understood, but it goes in places that it's like, wow, this is a whole nother level of, articulating it, and helps me to connect dots with things that I haven't necessarily seen her say. So it's almost like it's very compatible. There's things that, I don't know, we connected a lot of dots together, I guess you could say. So it's always pretty much, I would say she's the one that has been the most inspiring. I don't want to put like most, but who I gravitate to and who I feel a vibrational match with on a mission level. And her website for everybody, if I'm still under 2 minutes, is energeticsynthesis.com. Highly recommended. There you go. Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, Laura Eisenhower. This is Fade to Black. When we come back, we're going to continue this discussion, but I want to go back in time a little bit and talk about some of the ancient teachers out there as well. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Laura right after this short break. Stay with us. You have just listened to a full hour free preview of Fade to Black. To get the full show, all archives, just go to our podcast section at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also sign up to be a Fadernaut in our membership area, where we have downloadable MP3s.
Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Go Bagley Tappy.